There is a constant that has appeared in every entry of Sid Meier's Civilization's video game series, the wonder. Marvels of architecture that have awed and inspired millions of people throughout the centuries in every corner of the world. But how have these wonders been translated into their video game counterparts? What bonuses do they give and why? What is the historical reasoning behind each bonus and feature? This video aims to examine the historical influences behind these design choices, starting with Civilization VI's Ancient Era wonders. For each wonder, I will go through the effects it provides, the technology or civic required to construct it, its unique placement restriction, and the quote that is associated with it, always narrated by the wonderful Sean Bean. In doing so, I hope to uncover at least some of the logic and history that played a part in their design. So without further ado, let's take a look at these ancient wonders. Etemenanki. Etemenanki was a massive 7-tiered ziggurat built in the ancient city of Babylon, dedicated to the god Marduk. It symbolized the connection between heaven and earth and stood at the religious and administrative center of Babylonian society. In Civilization VI, Etemenanki provides the following bonuses: +2 science and +1 production to all Mars tiles in your empire, +1 science and +1 production on all floodplain tiles in the city in which it is built, and +2 science from the wonder itself. At first glance, these bonuses may seem unusual for what is essentially a religious monument. If Etemenanki was a temple, shouldn't it provide the player with faith? Well, the bonuses start to make more sense when we think about the environment in which the structure was built and the civilizations that developed within that environment. Etemenanki was constructed in ancient Babylonia, a civilization that developed between the Tigris River and the Euphrates River. This region was dominated by seasonal flooding and extensive marshlands. While these environments were extremely fertile, they were also unpredictable and difficult to manage. Early Mesopotamian societies had to develop irrigation systems, canal networks, and flood control infrastructure in order to stabilize agriculture. This required mathematical organization, long-term environmental observation, and administrative coordination. In gameplay terms, civilization represents this environmental mastery through science, symbolizing technical knowledge, and production, symbolizing the agricultural surplus that allowed large-scale construction projects like Etemenanki to exist. In that sense, the bonuses seem to reflect not the temple's religious role, but the technological and organizational progress of the civilization that built it. Etemenanki requires the writing technology. This is historically appropriate, even if not immediately obvious, if you consider Mesopotamia is where one of the world's earliest writing systems, that of cuneiform, was developed. Writing was not initially used for literature, but for administrative purposes, like recording crop production, managing labor, and organizing trade. Large temple complexes such as Etemenanki function not only as religious centers, but also as economic and administrative hubs. Without written records, coordinating projects at this scale would have been pretty much impossible. Etemenanki can only be built on floodplains or marsh tiles. This restriction again reflects the geography of ancient Mesopotamia. The civilizations of this region developed almost entirely along river systems where annual flooding created fertile but unstable land. This seems to reinforce the idea that the wonder represents the environmental control that the ancient Mesopotamians had.
Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves.
This quote comes from the book of Genesis and refers to the story of the Tower of Babel. There is a long-standing cultural and academic association between Etemenanki and the Tower of Babel. While the biblical tower is not a confirmed historical structure, many historians believe the story was inspired by large Mesopotamian ziggurats. Etemenanki itself was a massive stepped temple, and it was rebuilt multiple times, particularly during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar II. Interestingly enough, Alexander the Great had ordered that the ziggurat be repaired after his conquest of Babylon, but later, when seeing that no progress had actually been made, he decided to demolish it so that it can be rebuilt from scratch. However, he died before the project was started, and the Etemenanki was left destroyed. Ziggurats were designed to symbolically connect heaven and earth, making the quote about reaching the heavens thematically very appropriate. As was stated multiple times before, Etemenanki in Civ VI seems to be more tied to the general geography of the Mesopotamian peoples rather than giving emphasis to the purpose of the building itself. What is specifically interesting to me regarding this is the fact that the Wonder provides science, a resource that has been heavily tied to the Babylonian civilization in the gameplay side of Civ VI. It is very nice to see this emphasis on science, considering the Babylonians were exceptionally advanced for their time, making insane breakthroughs in the field of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. Great Bath. The Great Bath was a large and elaborate public bath in the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro, built by the Indus Valley civilization in what is today modern-day Pakistan. Constructed around 2500 BC, it is one of the oldest wonders depicted in the game. It is possible that it was used for both sanitary reasons as well as for ritual purification, and reflects the advanced urban planning and water management systems of the civilization. In Civilization VI, the Great Bath provides the following bonuses: +3 housing, +1 amenity from entertainment, floodplain tiles along the river containing this wonder are now immune to flood damage, -50% production and food yields from flood damage, and +1 faith to the yields of a tile belonging to the city for every time it has been flooded. The floodplains connection is immediately obvious since Mohenjo-Daro was established near the Indus River, a river system that provided vast amounts of fertile land but also posed a constant flood risk. Observing the ruins of this ancient city, archaeologists have gathered evidence that the city had a highly advanced drainage system, one of the earliest recorded instances of such thing. Ruins indicate that the city had a private and public sanitation system, where homes could obtain water from wells and wastewater would flow through covered drains. The Great Bath itself was part of that system and indicates a sophisticated approach to water flow management. This fact is transferred into the game as providing protection from flood damage, which is a very neat connection. Now, the rest of the bonuses seem to be more connected with the actual bath itself. The +1 amenity from entertainment can be explained from the fact that it would be, well, quite entertaining to be able to visit a bath like this at your leisure, especially considering it would have been the 25th century BC. The +3 to housing is a bit more abstract. Housing in Civ VI seems to be closely tied to general employment, seeing as many general tile improvements also provided. In that sense, it's easy to justify the fact that a large structure that deals with water flows, drainage, bathing, and rituals would require a lot of maintenance, meaning many people would be employed there. The last remaining effect, and perhaps the most interesting one, is that tiles get +1 faith yield when they are flooded. This can be explained from the fact that there is strong evidence that the Great Bath was also used for spiritual rituals. Mohenjo-Daro seems to be missing ruins of other impressive structures, like palaces or monuments, so it would stand to reason that its greatest building, the Great Bath, would have probably taken their spot as a ceremonial and spiritual space. The Great Bath requires the pottery technology. This is historically fitting because early ceramic technology was essential for water storage, transport, and sanitation. There are also many pots, clay idols, and terracotta shards that have been found both in Mohenjo-Daro as well as the greater Indus region in general, meaning that the technology of shaping and burning clay was greatly spread in the region. The wonder must be built on flat plains. It seems pretty obvious that the Great Bath would not have been built if there weren't enough waterways around it to support it.
Yet in this captious and untenable sieve, I still pour in the waters of my love. and lack not to lose still. Thus, Indian-like, religious in mine error, I adore the sun that looks upon his worshipper, but knows of him no more.
The in-game quote comes from William Shakespeare. While the quote is not directly related to the greatbath and is completely disconnected from the cultural background of the wonder, it does reference devotional imagery connected to natural forces. Helena describes her unrequited love as a futile effort, pouring love into a sieve, yet she persists in her adoration, comparing her devotion to an Indian worshipping the sun. There is also a very loose connection between the metaphorical pouring in the waters of love and that of literal bathing, I guess. Something of note is that while Civ VI did not feature a unique Indus-Valley civilization, it does feature Mohenjo-Daro as a city-state. It is actually, at least to my knowledge, the only civilization game where the ancient city, and the Great Bath itself for that matter, makes an appearance. I really enjoy how the developers implemented the small faith boost of the wonder. No matter the gameplay reasons for this decision, it is nice to know that it is also supported by the actual historical evidence we have. Hanging Gardens. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon are described as a magnificent series of terraced gardens built in the ancient city of Babylon. The gardens were said to feature elevated terraces filled with vegetation and an advanced irrigation system that raised water from the Euphrates River. They were considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, but despite that fame, no actual archaeological evidence has been found of their existence. In Civilization VI, the Hanging Gardens Wonder provides the following bonuses: increases growth by 15% in all cities, and gives +2 housing. These bonuses are a bit abstract, but there are definitely some justifications that we can make for them. The gardens are said to have been an extraordinary agricultural and engineering achievement, involving artificial terraces that allowed plants and trees to grow in a dense urban environment. In gameplay terms, increased growth represents improved food availability and agricultural productivity. Civilization capable of creating and maintaining such a large and complex garden would have definitely figured out efficient ways to feed their population. The additional housing would be explained once again as providing extra employment to the citizens of the city, since a structure like this would surely employ hundreds of people. These bonuses indicate that the Hanging Gardens Wonder gives more emphasis to the abundance of food and agricultural infrastructure rather than the aesthetic merits of the wonder. In other words, a civilization that would struggle to feed its own population could have probably never constructed an impressive and complex garden like this. The Hanging Gardens requires the irrigation technology. This requirement gives us another hint at the practical side of this wonder's supposed existence. Ancient sources describe a complex irrigation mechanism that continuously lifted water upwards to sustain the gardens. It does stand to reason that if those descriptions are true, the wonder would depend entirely on controlled water distribution, in other words, irrigation. Even if the Hanging Gardens never existed, it is true that the Mesopotamian civilizations developed extensive irrigation networks to manage river systems and support agriculture in otherwise dry environments. The wonder must be built along a river. This restriction makes perfect sense, since the existence of the Hanging Gardens would definitely require a constant water source. Ancient descriptions specifically emphasize that water was lifted from the Euphrates River to irrigate the terraces.
The ascent to the highest story is by stairs, and at their side are water engines, by means of which persons, appointed expressly for the purpose, are continually employed in raising water from the Euphrates into the garden.
The in-game quote comes from Strabo, an ancient Greek geographer who wrote about the gardens centuries after their supposed construction. His description focuses on the mechanical systems used to raise water, something that would have seemed more than impressive for its time. Most surviving descriptions of the hanginggardens come from the Greek writers rather than Babylonian records. This has led modern historians to remain inconclusive on whether the gardens actually existed. The construction of the Hanging Gardens is attributed to Nebuchadnezzar II. Several of his other building projects, like the restoration of the Sagila, various reconstructions, and the completion of the aforementioned Etemenanki, have been catalogued in ancient Babylonian texts, but no mention of the Hanging Gardens has yet been found. Something particularly interesting about the Hanging Gardens is that their historical uncertainty does not reduce their cultural significance. Whether fully historical or partly legendary, the idea of a massive elevated garden sustained through engineering reflects how ancient societies imagined the relationship between technology, nature, and royal power. Oracle. The Oracle of Delphi was one of the most important religious sites of the ancient Greek world. Dedicated to the god Apollo, the sanctuary was believed to be a place where divine knowledge could be communicated to humans through prophetic rituals performed by the Pythia. In Civilization VI, the Oracle provides the following bonuses: +1 culture and +1 faith. Patronage of great people costs 25% less faith, and districts in the city provide +2 great person points of their type. The culture and faith yield bonuses are very easy to explain, since Delphi was both a cultural as well as a religious hub, so the bonuses tie into that very neatly. The most interesting bonuses are clearly the ones related to great people generation. In the ancient Greek world, the Oracle of Delphi was not just a regular religious sanctuary. City-states, rulers, and generals would consult the oracle before founding colonies, declaring wars, or making major political decisions. Because of this, Delphi became closely associated with leadership, knowledge, and influence across many fields of society. The site was of such importance that the Greeks believed Delphi to be the omphalos, the literal navel or center of the world. Civ VI translates this historical role into gameplay through the great person mechanic. Great people represent exceptional individuals, be it scientists, writers, engineers, or generals, whose contributions shape civilization-wide progress. By increasing great person points from districts, the Oracle effectively represents the idea that the Wander's presence helps civilizations attract and empower extraordinary individuals. Just like in real life, great people of all sorts would go to the Oracle for guidance, so in the game they come to your civilization. Reducing the faith cost of the patronage is also a tidy hint into how this attractiveness and importance of the Oracle stems from a religious core, since the Pythia acted as a spokesperson of Apollo. This interpretation of the wonder aligns very well with how ancient Greeks viewed divine inspiration. Religious belief was deeply connected to intellectual and cultural achievement, and success in politics, philosophy, and warfare was often seen as influenced by the gods. In that sense, the Oracle has been translated perfectly, with its bonuses being able to suit pretty much every victory type. The Oracle requires the mysticism civic. This just fits like a glove. There couldn't be a civic that fits the themes of the Oracle more. The importance of the Oracle is intrinsically connected to the prophetic process of the Pythia. Ancient sources mention the use of laurel leaves, sacred to Apollo, and describe the Pythia entering a trance-like state before delivering her prophecies. The wonder must be built on hills. This reflects the real-world geography of Delphi, which was constructed on the slopes of Mount Parnassus. Many Greek religious sanctuaries were built in elevated locations, both for defensive reasons and for symbolic ones, as height was often associated with closeness to the divine.
I sprang upon the swift ship in the form of a dolphin. Pray to me as Apollo Delphinius. Also the altar itself shall be called Delphinius and overlooked forever.
The in-game quote comes from Homer, referencing Apollo in his aspect as Apollo Delphinius. The passage connects the god directly to Delphi, making reference to how the then young god came to be worshipped. The tale goes that while Apollo was wondering about what kind of followers he wanted to accrue, he spotted a ship of Cretan pirates. Apollo turned into a dolphin and jumped in the pirate's ship. The crew tried to throw the dolphin off the ship, but the transformed god started shaking the ship and the pirates submitted to him. He then led the pirate ship into Delphi and made the crew into its priests, instructing them to guard the temple and be loyal servants to his cause. Overall, the Oracle in Civilization VI is one of my favorite interpretations in the game. There is something I really love about the idea that the great people of the eras would flock to this place for guidance, and it's a very clever way to use this game's mechanics to show this effect. The faith discount is just the cherry on top. There is honestly nothing I would change about this wonder. Great execution. Pyramids. The pyramids are arguably one of the most iconic and boldest wonders depicted in Civilization VI. There are many pyramids all around Egypt, but the most famous ones, and the ones that the game is directly depicting, are those on the Giza Plateau, just outside modern Cairo. The Pyramid of Khufu, also known as the Great Pyramid of Giza, is actually the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world that still survives today. In Civilization VI, the pyramids provide the following bonuses: +2 culture, they grant a free builder, and all builders receive an extra build charge. We can start with a minor culture bonus, since it is a bit easier to explain. The pyramids have been one of the most admired cultural icons for pretty much all of their existence. To put it into perspective, by the time Cleopatra ruled Egypt, the pyramids were already more than 2,500 years old. From historians and travelers of the Hellenistic world to the tourists of the modern day, the pyramids have never failed to attract the eyes of the world. Awe-inspiring to this day, this wonder has definitely secured its place as one of the most recognizable and important cultural landmarks. Now, onto the more specific bonuses. It's obvious that the pyramids put focus on the builder unit in Civ VI. The player gets an immediate free builder, as well as an important boost to all of their builders for the rest of the game. These bonuses are probably inspired by the pure logistical and organizational achievement that the construction of the pyramids was. It's very evident that a huge workforce would be required to construct the pyramids. The ancient Greeks believed that this workforce was consisted of slaves, but modern evidence suggests that it was more likely constituted by conscript laborers. The ancient Egyptians organized these laborers in a way that was probably never seen before at that point of humanity's history. An entire workers' village was erected near the pyramid site, where archaeological evidence suggests that these laborers enjoyed a variety of benefits, such as plenitude of food, medical aid, while even receiving proper burials. This discovery suggests that the workforce that built the pyramids was not seen as easily disposable by the pharaohs of the time. Furthermore, it gives a hint that the Egyptians regarded those workers as highly skilled, deserving of all the amenities that could be provided during the long period of construction. Alongside this permanent workforce, there would also have been up to possibly tens of thousands of seasonal workers who would rotate in periods of 3 to 4 months that would help with other auxiliary tasks around the construction site. The construction also required surveyors, architects, and engineers capable of aligning the pyramids with remarkable precision. Civ VI seems to extract 2 main points from this historical analysis. First, the sheer number of workers that was required for the construction of the pyramids, which it translates into gameplay by gifting the player an extra builder, and second, the organization and the efficiency of these laborers, which it translates by improving the work output of the civilization's builders. Very historically apt bonuses overall. The pyramids require the masonry technology. The pyramids represent one of the earliest and most impressive achievements in large-scale stone construction. They mostly consisted of millions of limestone and granite blocks that were used in the internal chambers. This means that an astronomical amount of material was quarried near Giza, which stonemasons would later modify to the appropriate sizes. This whole process requires a great understanding of accruing and modifying hard material, which the game represents through the masonry technology. The wonder must be built on desert or desert floodplain styles. Another very straightforward feature. While the fertile lands of Egypt were concentrated along the Nile River, the monumental pyramids themselves were constructed on the desert plateau just outside the river's floodplain.
From the height of these pyramids, 40 centuries look down on us.
The in-game quote comes from Napoleon Bonaparte, who was reportedly addressing his soldiers during the Egyptian campaign in 1798. The sentiment of the quote captures the immense historical weight of the pyramids. Even by the late 18th century, they were already thousands of years old and had become symbols of the deep antiquity of human civilization. The pyramids are undoubtedly an iconic wonder which has appeared in every single one of the mainline Civilization games. The sheer scale of them has puzzled historians for millennia, and is a testament to what humans can construct when they organize their efforts. In that way, Civ VI chooses to place emphasis on the workers that built the pyramids, rather than the pharaohs that were entombed in them, which I find very fair. Stonehenge. This will be a bit tricky. Stonehenge is probably the oldest wonder of Civ VI. Located on the Salisbury Plain in southern England, it is one of the most famous prehistoric monuments in the world. The structure consists of massive standing stones arranged in several circular formations. Construction began around 3000 BC and continued for many centuries, gradually shaping the monument we recognize today. In Civilization VI, Stonehenge provides the following bonuses. +2 faith, it grants a free great prophet, and great prophets may found a religion on Stonehenge instead of a holy site. So, Stonehenge's purpose is still wrapped in mystery, since there are no written records from the time of its construction and use. However, archaeologists have proposed that the monument may have been used as a religious site, an astronomical observatory, or possibly both. Looking at the effects of Stonehenge in-game, it is clear that the developers have focused mainly on the religious side of things, with the wonder basically acting as a beefed-up early holy site. One influential theory about Stonehenge's religious use was proposed by English archaeologist Mike Parker Pearson. Supposedly, Stonehenge was spiritually connected to the Darrington Walls, a nearby Neolithic settlement. That area would be a place for the living, while Stonehenge would be a place for the dead, acting as a funeral site. According to the theory, people may have traveled along the River Avon and Stonehenge Avenue as part of a ceremonial journey from life to death, a type of ritual passage that appears in many cultures around the world. This theory seems to be supported by the archaeological discoveries of cremated human remains in nearby Barrow Mounds, whose DNA seems to be from all around Britain, indicating that Stonehenge and the area around it could have been used for the funeral rites of elite and important people of the age. If this was indeed one of Stonehenge's main uses, then it would be fair to say that it's one of humanity's earliest holy sites, justifying the bonuses that Civ VI attributes to it. This wonder requires the astrology technology. As mentioned earlier, one of the major theories about Stonehenge involves astronomical observation. Indeed, Stonehenge is aligned in such a way to meet the sunset of the winter solstice on one side and the sunrise of the summer solstice on the other. This placement makes it very possible that the structure was used as a form of ceremonial calendar or a way to predict eclipses, equinoxes, and other important events inside the lunar year. This information would have been important for the farmers of the time, helping them track seasonal cycles, but it could also be used for ceremonial purposes. In any case, it shows an understanding of astrology from the people that constructed it. The wonder must be built on flatland adjacent to stone. The flatland requirement is obvious from the geography of the wonder, but we can dig a little bit deeper regarding the stone requirement. Stonehenge's outer ring consists of sarsen standing stones topped with horizontal lintel stones, while on the inside ring smaller blue stones were used. What is interesting about this, however, is that the blue stones seem to have come from a region in Wales, around 230 kilometers away. Even the large sarsens are believed to have originated from a forest 26 kilometers away from the site. So while it makes sense for Stonehenge to require the presence of stone, it having to be adjacent to it maybe isn't that accurate of a requirement.
Can you imagine trying to talk 600 people into helping you drag a 50-ton stone 18 miles across the countryside and muscle it into an upright position and then saying, "Right lads, another 20 like that, then we can party"?
The in-game quote comes from the writer Bill Bryson from his humorous travel book, The Road to Little Dribbling. Civ VI uses some more jokey quotes at times, which I'm not always a huge fan of. However, in this instance, the quote does give a little bit of an insight into one of the most interesting facts about Stonehenge. As mentioned in the previous segment, many of the stones used for Stonehenge seem to have originated in quarries far away from the site. This raises the obvious question of how these Neolithic people were able to move these large stones all that distance. There are many theories regarding this, from the use of wooden logs that could be rolled with the stones on top of them, to using a sleigh on a track greased with animal fat. Interestingly enough, an experiment was conducted in 1995 where a team of 100 people were able to move 40 tons of stone using a sleigh, 29 kilometers, to give insight into a possible process that was used. I have mixed feelings on how Stonehenge is transferred into gameplay for Civilization VI. On one hand, the specific bonuses that it provides are a bit too general for my liking, but on the other, it does a surprisingly great job of incorporating many of the different theories surrounding the monument. Its religious function is reflected in the faith bonuses. The astronomical theories are represented through the astrology requirement, and the monumental stone construction is reflected in the building restrictions. It is probably the best job that could have been done when we consider all the mystery that surrounds this Neolithic wonder. Temple of Artemis. The Temple of Artemis, located in Ephesus, in what is now modern-day Turkey, was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Originally constructed in the 6th century BC and rebuilt multiple times after destruction, it was an enormous and richly decorated temple dedicated to the goddess Artemis. In Civilization VI, the Temple of Artemis provides the following bonuses: +4 food, +3 housing, and its camp, pasture and plantation improvement within 4 tiles of this wonder provides +1 amenity. To me, the Temple of Artemis seems to be an instance where the developers didn't assign the bonuses according to the historical wonder itself, but rather a specific aspect that the wonder is related to. In this case, that would be the ancient Greek goddess Artemis. Artemis, in Greek mythology, is the goddess of the hunt, one of the most widely worshipped among the Olympian gods, and the temple in Ephesus was by far the largest temple erected in her name. She was the goddess of wild animals, vegetation, the hunt, childbirth, and many other things mostly related to nature. We can immediately connect this with the bonus amenity given to the camps, pastures, and plantations. These tile improvements in Civ VI relate to how humanity can extract goods from nature, be it hunting, animal husbandry, gathering, or cultivating. Now, why would the wonder provide amenity instead of faith? I think I have an explanation, but it's a bit of a roundabout one. So stick with me here. Amenities in Civ VI represent happiness, stability, and population satisfaction in general. It's a safe assumption that a civilization that would worship Artemis to the extent of constructing such a large temple for her would have developed a very deep connection with nature. The argument would be that this deeper connection would not be constricted within the temple's confines, but would reflect a more general attitude towards the civilization's approach to resource extraction. Hunting, gathering, and cultivating would not be seen as just a means to survival, nor as a religious endeavor on their own, but as an integrated part of the society structure that would provide its own form of societal cohesion and stability. In pure words, worship of Artemis would not be as much a religious affair as it would be a general reflection of the civilization's interaction with natural resources as part of the greater balance. The bonus to food can also be explained as a side effect of this societal attitude, since it's fair to assume that a greater understanding of nature would come with increased expertise in the ways of resource extraction. The bonus to housing gives me a nice excuse to finally talk about the actual wonder itself. As explained with previous wonders, housing seems to reflect employment, or at the very least, sizable structures. The third and final iteration of the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus was one of the largest temples of the ancient world, and supposedly the first Greek temple made out of marble. Featuring 127 columns and encompassing an area of roughly 6,000 square meters, it earned its place as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It goes without saying that a structure as grand as this would require a large and permanent workforce to maintain it, not to mention all the priests and other auxiliary positions. The wonder requires the archery technology. This is once again most likely a reference to the goddess Artemis herself, rather than the actual wonder. As mentioned, Artemis was a deity of many things, but by far the most characteristic aspect of her was that of the hunt. This is the reason why Artemis's most prominent symbol is the bow, so the connection with archery is pretty one-to-one. However, there is a little bit of a mix-up which comes to light when we dip just a little bit deeper. The Temple of Artemis in Ephesus was not exactly dedicated to Artemis, as most commonly depicted today. Instead, it was dedicated to the Ephesian Artemis, which was a distinctive form of the goddess, at least from the ancient Greeks' perspective. While the core of the two depictions largely remain the same, it is worth noting that the Ephesian Artemis seems to be more rooted to Middle Eastern and Egyptian Mother Earth deities, with a large emphasis on nurturing and protecting, something that can also be seen in her depictions. The multiple orbs protruding from her chest are interpreted as breasts, figs, or even bull testicles. Just a small side note that I thought was worth mentioning. The wonder must be built next to a camp. We can again explain this through the Artemis connection, since camps is the tile improvement most closely connected to wildlife, used to improve resources like deer, pelts, and truffles. I think I have already explained the relation of Artemis and her worshippers with nature, so the connection is justified. However, I couldn't find evidence of hunting grounds being present near the temple, so having the wonder be adjacent to a camp is a bit too restrictive in my opinion, disregarding any gameplay reasons for it.
When I saw the house of Artemis that mounted to the clouds, those other marvels lost their brilliancy, and I said, Lo, apart from Olympus, the sun never looked on aught so grand.
The in-game quote comes from Antipater of Sidon, an ancient Greek poet. The poem makes one of the earliest known references to the 7 wonders of the ancient world, where Antipater makes it apparently clear that the Temple of Artemis is his favorite, so that must count for something. How Civ VI handles the Temple of Artemis is a bit interesting to me. It clearly shows emphasis on the attributes of Artemis as a deity, rather than the temple itself as a monument and a place of worship. In doing so, it does disregard some of the most unique aspects of the Temple of Artemis that could have been showcased otherwise. Something I found of note is that the temple itself was remade 3 times on the same exact location, before being destroyed each time in very different circumstances. Alexander the Great even offered to pay for the temple's final construction, but the Ephesians refused him, saying that It would be improper for one god to build the temple to another. So there we have it. These were all the ancient era wonders that appear in Civilization VI and how their history shaped their gameplay. I would say there was a nice bit of variety, and I believe it will only get better from here on out. Playing video games, especially ones like Civilization, it is very easy to be absorbed by the gameplay side of things. You focus on optimizing guilds, planning your next move, and making the most efficient decisions without really stopping to ask why certain things work the way they do. The reasoning behind each bonus could easily be reduced down to just game balance. But taking a step back and looking more closely at those design decisions can be very fun and rewarding. It seems that the developers have done a very good job at tying the gameplay to the actual history, so I found the process very satisfying overall. This is just the first part of what I hope will become a full series, where I will go through each and every one of the 53 wonders that make an appearance in Civ VI, era by era, looking at how their history informed their design in the game. So thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for the upcoming parts.